Hi, my name is Jessica von Medicus. I'm a lead lighting artist at Nickelodeon Animation Studios. As a lead lighting artist, I handle all the looks and the lighting for a certain TV show at Nickelodeon. Currently, I'm on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And yeah, I handle everything from the way the sun looks on an outdoor set to indoor lighting, lamps, fluorescence, everything like in an environment. So specifically for CG, the way it works is kind of like a movie set, and you need to put all the lights into the set. So there's nothing when I start out, so it's completely black. There might be textures like basically like paint on the wall, or the characters might have clothes and whatnot, but there's no light on them. So I basically take the spotlights and the fill lights and everything and put it into the set. That's what I do. We primarily use Maya. Currently we're using 2012, but we're moving into 2016. We're also on a couple of projects using Redshift, which is the actual renderer. So we use Mental Ray mainly in Maya, but then we're also using Redshift, which is pretty fun. It's been exciting to play with and get to know. Okay, so back in 2009, I think, is when I was here. So after I graduated, well, I didn't really graduate. After I left Lakeland, I started at Full Sail University in Orlando, Florida in the summer of 2009, and I did 21 months there. Full Sail is an accelerated program, so you go to class pretty much 24/7. You could have class anytime during the day, and it's a 21-month program. You have 2 classes a month. There's no time to have a job or anything like that. You just go, go, go. They start out with simple programs like learning how to operate in Maya and all that stuff. And then they teach you pretty much everything down the pipeline. So they start with modeling, and then they teach you a little bit of texturing and lighting, and then you go into harder stuff like character modeling, so organic modeling. And then they teach you rigging, and then compositing and effects. And they even get a little scripting in there too. So they pretty much give you all the tools you need to know everything about the CG pipeline, which is really nice, because then at the end there's 5 months where you pick what you want to do. So I specifically picked lighting and shading. So I did texture and lighting. And you have to pass an art test, so to prove that you can do it. And you have to get, I think, over a C or something like that to be able to move on. And then for the last 5 months, you have 3 months to build your assets for your demo reel. So for me, I built 3 environments. I think one was like a wine bottle and some corks or something like that. And then another was like a farmhouse, like a really dirty farmhouse. And so I had to do everything for that. I had to model it, I had to texture it, unless you had friends who could help you. So it was kind of nice. You got to be able to really experience what being in the industry at a job would be like. So 3 months you're building your assets, and then 1 month you are putting it together, rendering it out into a movie. And then I forgot the month before you build your assets, you have an entire month to previs everything, so to gather all your sources and stuff. So then when I graduated, at the time, Full Sail had a career development program. They still do. And they sent me a lead to Nickelodeon, and they said, "We think you would be really good for this. You passed and your demo reel was really good, so we'd like you to apply for this." So I did, and I applied for the texture and lighting at Nickelodeon, and they called me 2 or 3 weeks later. I was actually on spring break, and I was visiting home, and I got the phone call that, "Oh, we'd like you to interview," and I was like, "What, really?" It was so awesome. I was like, "Okay, as soon as possible, I'm ready whenever." So the next day we interviewed, and I actually interviewed outside in the car, because we were at having family gatherings. It was really funny. Yeah, and I interviewed with my boss, and he really liked everything. And out of all the people he interviewed, he said that I had the most knowledge, like hands-on knowledge. And when he was asking me questions about mental ray and whatnot, he was like, "You actually knew what you were talking about." So and he's like, "That's pretty rare for a college grad." So I was pretty happy about that. So about 2 weeks later, I found out I got the job, and I packed everything up and moved from Florida to California in my tiny car with my cat and my rabbit at the time. I had no idea what LA was like. I actually, for a long time, never thought I would actually go to LA because it was just big and scary. And, I'm from Charleston, so it was, I'm used to tiny rural. But then when I got there, I just fell in love immediately. I started out just as a lighting artist. It was just me and my boss for a long time. And I started lighting characters, lighting sets pretty much immediately. In fact, if you watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, my first set was the dojo. So there's this dojo that has a big tree, and then there's, it's all in the sewer. So there's a sewer grate at the top, and there are like rays that come down, and there's all these tatami mats and sliding door where Splinter sleeps and everything. And that was my first set. So every time I see that, because it comes up in almost every episode, I'm like, that was the one I did. And I think it still looks pretty good to this day. So yeah, and then I was just a lighting artist for about four and a half years. And then last year, my boss moved on to another project, and I took over, and now I'm the lead on my of my department. So it's pretty good. It's been a great 5-6 years. So yeah, that's how I got to Nickelodeon. I do. I love my job. I love my job a lot. A lot of times when it gets really hard, when I'm working a lot of hours or working hard on a project and it's just like you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, I try to remind myself I have one of the best jobs I could possibly have. Like, I get to be creative, I get to kind of make my own hours. Nickelodeon's a great company. They treat us very well. And like, I love my coworkers. Everyone's so great to get along with. We have so many good conversations, and we have so many talented people on Turtles specifically. I've met so many people that just like have enriched my life so much and changed it for the better. Ooh, that's a tough question. What did I want to be when I grew up? Well, ever since I can remember, I've been drawing. Like, even when I was really young, I would get like, my mom's computer paper, and I would draw all the time. I had tons of coloring books. So I always knew I wanted to do something artistic. Of course, when I was little, I went to like, oh, I want to be a vet because I love animals. I think every like little kid that had animals wanted to be a vet at some point. But when I was really young, I didn't know that animation and cartooning was like a thing. So I really wanted to be an architect for a while. Up until probably almost high school, I thought I would be an architect. I used to get graph paper and draw blueprints of houses, and I thought that it was so cool. It was nothing fancy at all. It was just like boxes, and I'd draw the little lines for 2 windows. It was basically nothing fancier than like a layout for a new apartment or anything like that. But then, actually in middle school, it was anime that started me into it, and video games. And once I found out about anime, I got like some magazines, and I started seeing ads for schools. And I thought I, for the longest time, would go to the Vancouver Animation School because that was always advertised in all the anime magazines and gaming magazines that I had. But then in high school, when it was time for me to start looking for colleges, I stumbled upon Full Sail, and then I really found out that like, oh, I could be a gaming artist. Like, I could really do this. Like, there's a process. Like, I didn't even think this was possible. So for the longest time, I actually thought I wanted to go into games because I got Final Fantasy 12 and I watched it, and the opening credits were so gorgeous at the time, and it was fantastic to me. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to make beautiful images like this that just inspire people. And so I started in games. I actually went to Full Sail for a gaming degree, but then halfway through they said, well, if you're in animation, you could switch into games super easily, whereas going the other way around, it's more difficult because in animation you kind of learn everything, especially for texturing and lighting. Like, they kind of cross over super easily. So so I switched to animation, and then now I'm here at Nickelodeon. So. I actually have a lot of advice, so I hope I don't overdo it. But my biggest advice would be work your butt off. Like, really, that's what it comes down to. Artists and animators in the industry, it feels like we never stop. Like, we live and breathe animation. We live and breathe art. Like, of course, I get to come home and I get to watch TV sometimes, but pretty much you have to breathe your craft. Always be drawing, always be studying, always try to learn everything you possibly can. Never think you're good enough, because you never will be. Like, you always got to keep going. Not that you won't be good, but you have to keep going. There's always something new. It's an industry that you can kind of never stop. Like, there's always something new coming out. I learned Maya for the longest time, and then Redshift comes out, which is like a completely different based and new renderer that now everyone's starting to use. So just always try to soak everything up that you possibly can, and especially don't forget about the fundamentals of art, because 3D really is art. Like, learning how, even modeling a building, there is art to that. You need to know how it's going to be presented to the client, towards the audience. You need to know cinematography. You need to know, the rule of thirds, how lighting works on things. Because even a set, you need to know how it's going to look when it's actually rendered out. You need to have all that in mind. So really, yeah, my biggest advice is just never stop learning. Keep trying to absorb everything you possibly can, and just, be the best artist that you can be. It has not been easy. Like I said, for my advice, I think that was the biggest thing I had to learn, was that, you kind of can't stop. It's not an easy 9-to-5 job. You can't just like show up and, get by, which is, it's not a bad thing, You're always learning, you're always challenging yourself. And I think one of the biggest things was, I've always been a motivated person. I've always, been a go-getter, but, sometimes you get tired. Sometimes you don't want to, work as hard, but on a show where you have deadlines every 2 weeks, you kind of can't stop. And you have to like learn how to push yourself and learn how to keep growing, and learn how to just maintain your artistic and integrity throughout, all the hard times. And, when I moved out to LA, it was my first time living alone, and, I had to really grow up quick. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned, was just, being true to yourself, but also like make sure you keep going, after the hard times. And also, not just that, but learning how to work with people has been a big thing. Just like, I guess that's kind of part of growing up as well. You learn how to meet different people and take criticism, especially as an artist, because we're all kind of sensitive, and if we get a bad critique, we think that our life is over, and oh, why are we even doing this? There's tons of internet memes about an artist starts on a project, and then they hate the world and they think they're awful, and then, oh, I'm just gonna give up, and then all of a sudden a spark comes through and you're like, oh, I'm the best thing in the world. So I think just learning to get over those hurdles and knowing that in the end, something beautiful is going to come out of it. Best thing that happened to me has been becoming the lead on Turtles. It's been such an awesome time, and I never thought, I've always been kind of, I guess maybe not thought of myself as well as others see me sometimes, and so when I was offered the lead position, it came as a huge surprise and kind of as a shock. Like, I never thought that I would move up, even though I'd been there for almost 5 years, and I knew the ins and outs. I was still like, no, they don't think of me like, maybe I'm not good enough. So when I got the lead position, it changed my life, and things got so much better, and everything was just clearer, and even just coming from an artist to a management position, it solidified a lot of the things that I was doing, and I learned so much, and it just changed my mindset. So I think that's been one of the best things. One of the hardest things, or one of the worst things, I had some difficulties working with a particular coworker, and it was a couple of years of just learning how to deal with people. And that's why I say previously, like, it's one of the hardest things, but it's also one of the biggest things I learned of, how to not let your personality affect someone else, and to get the job done day to day, but be professional, and to just not let other people's views and opinions and critiques get you down. So that was definitely hard for me, because I'm kind of an independent person, and this person was kind of difficult to work with. But in the end, we became good friends, and we learned a lot from each other. And so I'm glad that I stuck it out and didn't give up. So. I'm going to be cheesy and start off with, my favorite thing is starting with nothing and making something beautiful at the end. Starting with a gray model, and people would look at it and be like, oh, I don't understand. How does that turn into the beautiful images that we see in movies? And then hitting that render button after I've put in the lights and the spec and the glows and everything, and then it comes out and it's like this beautiful picture. That's probably one of my favorite things. My least favorite part is probably the technical part. Like, I like scripting kind of, but just like there's still mundane kind of paperwork-ish type things that go with it. So once we light sets, you can't just throw lights in there and then push it on to the next step and hope someone knows what's going on. You kind of have to set everything up, and you of course have to name it and organize it, and that's like the non-creative part. So that's just like push buttons, type things in. That's probably my least favorite part. Yeah, we have a script, and we have like a color script, and we have art direction. But for the most part, a lot of things I have full creative control on to create. And we'll have meetings, creative meetings, where the CG producer and the art director will tell me, oh, I want this to feel like space, like we're out in space. And one of the first creative things I got to do was for the Turtles. They had space suits because we went into space, and I got to completely create the lighting look for that. So, you had to pick the light that looked like it was the sun. Couldn't have too much softness or anything. It had to be like a hard pinpoint light. And then, but space doesn't have any other type of light, so you kind of have to creatively decide. Put a blue rim or something on it. And yeah, I don't think I would choose any other job. The only other job I think I would choose would be photography, but I get to do that as well. So, and that is pretty much, the supplemental to lighting, because I get to look through the camera and see real world lighting, which helps me in the computer. So pretty much I'm living the dream right now, you know? I think that's a difficult question because, yeah, you know, I've talked about maybe becoming an art director or, you know, what is the next step after this. You know, I really like where I'm at now. I think if anything, I maybe would want to become a supervisor, but maybe a couple years down the road. Because I really like being a lead. Like, it's a nice balance between still being able to be creative, but also having a little bit of managerial position, you know, being in charge of, you know, certain things. So, yeah, I really like where I'm at now, and the only thing that I would see in the future would be working on more awesome projects. When you start out, usually you're paid at a lower rate. It's hourly, unless you work at a company that does pay you salary. But for the most part, I believe most animation studios work hourly. So it's pretty easy from there to go up if you, you know, if you ask for raises. Usually they give you like a yearly raise, you know, income raise. But yeah, you start out at a pretty decent rate for at least at Nickelodeon, I started out at a pretty decent rate for a starting artist. And then as the years went on, I got more and more responsibility, and of course along with that came raises, and then when you get promoted, yeah, usually you get a pretty decent raise. So yeah, and then a lot of the times what happens is when you move from studio to studio, you can kind of negotiate your rate, and if you've got a decent experience, of course you can negotiate higher and whatnot. And Nickelodeon and a couple other companies are union, so we have a union behind us to be able to make sure that we're being paid, you know, correctly and everything. Okay, so yeah, I have a lot of favorite stories. We have a lot of parties and things like that at Nickelodeon. One of my favorite things was our first year wrap party. We went out and of course we're celebrating, and they brought in all the voice actors to the party as well. And I got to meet Rob Paulson, who's the voice of Donnie, and he was also the voice of Pinky from Pinky and the Brain. Yeah, he's really cool. He's the sweetest guy, for real. And they had a photo booth at this party, and so a ton of us were just dragging the voice actors in and taking photos with them. It was so much fun. And then I also got to meet Kevin Eastman. He came around one year and like literally came around to every person's desk to see what they were doing. And that was just, I was like, Kevin Eastman is at my desk. This is so cool. This is the highlight of my career. Like, it was so cool. And like, I got to show him like what I was working on. I don't even remember what I was working on at the time, but it was so cool. So yeah, we get to meet a lot of cool people like that. Here at Lakeland, I learned, you know, the fundamentals of Maya, which was a huge help in moving on to Full Sail, and then of course my career. Mainly in that I was comfortable with the program before I went into school, so I kind of already had a jump start. So that first class, you know, the first month when we actually touched Maya, we like put together a snowman or something like that, you know, and some kids, you know, they'd never touched a 3D program before, you know, they had no idea how to move around in it, and it took a long time. And I totally understand that, because I remember it took me an entire semester to understand Maya. So it was really helpful to, you know, just know how to move around in it and know certain things. And I think at the time we worked in SketchUp even first, which was kind of nice because without even knowing it, moving to different programs and learning how to work in different programs is an asset itself, you know, not scaring yourself and, you know, being like, oh, it's going to be different, I don't know what to do. But that's like a huge thing of like, you know, that once you get comfortable in one program, you need to be able to kind of take those skills and move them into another program. And not only the Maya class that we took here, but I also took a Adobe Premiere class with you, and it was that actually helped a lot because I was super fluent in video editing programs, and you'd be surprised, but that actually comes in a lot of help, because once you render out all your images, what do you do with them? You need to be able to put them together. So it just kind of like really broadened my scope of of technology knowledge. I love what I do. It's been amazing, and it's been an awesome journey. I never thought I would come here. I mean, you tell 9-year-old me who's sitting in front of the TV watching Rugrats that one day you're going to be working for that company, I'd be like, what? You're lying. Nuh-uh. So never stop believing, never stop, attaining your goals. And if you really want something, work hard at it. Try to be the best that you can be. Try to be the best, person for that job. And yeah, just to everybody, like, work hard and you will achieve what you want to do.